All right. So for the final moment of our conference, I would like to gather here several story practitioners who have already come live during the conference for a small reflective game I thought of while preparing for this event. So here they are. They're joining us live. Karen Dietz, Kevin Cordi, Rain Bennet, Kat Koppett, Louis Richardson, and Terrence Gargiulo. This is quite a crowd, and I'm really looking forward to it. And we are going to discuss the skills and tasks and challenges of the CSO in a very creative, well, to flatter my own self, in a very creative way that I figured out we could try at this conference. All right, what a crowd. It's so many of us. If we just press the fires to ourselves, they will be burning. Welcome, everyone.
Do it.
Oh, lovely to have you. So, for our last panel discussion, just to be clear about the format. Yeah.
Artem, I'm not hearing you.
We lost your audio.
Yeah.
Hey, Terrence.
Hey, how is everyone? Wonderful to be here.
Everyone. Yeah.
Yep. Am I on now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah. So there is an issue. This platform probably moderates how much microphone you can have at one given moment. So I would really ask you to keep it off while you're not speaking. Just, Awesome. Thank you so much. So I figured that we could do this small reflection together with all of us and the chat. So I welcome everyone who is live right now and listening to us to actively engage, because I figured that doing a standard panel where I ask the question and we just go one by one is not fun. So I figured we could play a little game where I will be bringing up questions one by one, and we will be answering them in such a format that first, we do not say anything, but we type our answers into the chat without sending them. So then we send them at the same time, and we go one by one commenting them. And please feel free to join us from the listening podium with your answers too, but we will be hearing comments only from the speakers. So that's the kind of game we can play, and I have a couple of questions that I figured out would be useful to wrap it up. So the first question is, what is the most important task that leaders need to be able to solve in their organizations with stories today? And I really urge you to focus on one. I know it. This is hard, but just one task that you believe is like the most important. Let's take a minute to type. Oh, Mariel, you're the best. So type our answer into the chat. Do not reply yet. Do not send it yet. And for the speakers in the room, when you type it in, please raise your hand in the lower right corner so we can know that you're ready. It's in here. Yeah. Please figured it out. It's going to be a party of raised hands. Awesome. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, I raised my hand. Okay. Rain, let us know when you're ready. Oh, you're good. I was just, yeah. So you're ready. Okay. Thumbs up works for me too. So 1, 2, 3, send. Everyone, let's send it to the chat. All right. So what I offer us to do is, dear friends, unmute yourself one by one, and you can talk about your answer. You can talk about the similarities you see in the chat. Whichever reflection, just 1 or 2 minutes from each of you to to reflect on what we see there. Whoever goes first, just a real hand.
Artem, I think you should just call him.
You just called yourself. So Rain, you're the first one, and then you pass it on.
No, wait, no. All right, fine. I didn't intend to do that, team. Okay, so we talked about this in my session. I love all the answers, by the way. This is a great vision you had, Artem, to get all of us together. I love what Terrence said. I love cat meaning making. So for me, I talked in my speech about the difference in stories and narrative, right? And often we get caught up in learning how to tell stories, and my approach is always understanding, well, like what is the overall message narrative that we are trying to have? Because if once we have that identified, it informs all of the decisions, not just storytelling, but all of the decisions that we make, which does connect the people, like everybody else is saying. I think most of us are saying similar things in different language, or with different words rather. So for me, I think first and foremost, having the talk about exactly what that is, who we are and what we're trying to be and why and for whom, and having everybody, yes, clear vision, Madeline. I mean, I think it's the same thing. And so that is the big domino, in my opinion, that knocks down all the rest. Instead of going around here and trying to do all of these things, what's the top down thing that will impact all of the other not smaller decisions in like a negative sense, but the other decisions we have to make. So that's where I would like to start.
You pass it on to anyone, so I'm just here witnessing the process.
I pass it along to anyone. Well, I pass it to Terrence then, since I know Terrence.
Microphone.
Thanks, Rain. So I think the metaphor is the amino acid within the DNA. So I said the task, which means how the person shows up, and really our purpose is in creating hope for people, that they actually have a place in that organization, that they can create fruits from bringing their gifts and talents, and that they have alignment with purpose and can bring the best of themselves. So I'm going to pass it on to Karen. I miss you. How are you? You're on.
Wait. We cannot hear you yet. But the mic is on, but we cannot hear you for some reason. No, it's not coming through. Yeah, it's not coming through yet. Sorry. Maybe you could refresh the page. Maybe that will help, because there's like a lot of us. Maybe that's the issue. So sorry about that.
Kat, I'm gonna switch over to you then.
All right, and I hope.
All right, can you hear me?
I hope Karen can rejoin us. You can, yeah.
Karen's back, so I'll pass it back to Karen if we can hear her. We can't though. No.
I'll fix it. Okay. Maybe we're waiting for you.
Oh yeah.
On to you then.
Figured it out. Yeah. I of course love everything that everybody's saying. I think to me the DNA of story is meaning making, right? That it is what we're doing all the time. It's how our brains are making sense of the world, and that our work as storytellers is sort of helping folks do that consciously and intentionally, as opposed to just unconsciously and habitually, and for us to surface and give and receive and cross-pollinate and the meaning making that we're doing individually and bring us together collectively. So everything else to me feels like it's built on that foundation of the power of story. All of these other things, people connecting, having a vision, understanding what I do in an organization, being able to brand or speak about the organization, starts with the understanding and clarity and meaning making that comes from good story. Can we hear you, Karen? No. I'll pass to Lewis.
just quick question from my side. Karen, are you on Google Chrome? Just nod if you are. Yes. I'm not really sure how to fix it. I'm so sorry.
This is Lewis. I had this problem the other day on my session, and what I found out was I was being given a lot of directions, but the one that was most that I got to was up at the top of your browser where it has the address. There's a little thing that looks like a video. Click on that and see if your microphone is enabled there. It's like a little blue icon next to the address in the top of your browser. I found that mine wasn't. Everywhere else it looked like it was enabled. It was enabled inside of Google. It was enabled everywhere else, but just wasn't enabled there. So I don't know if that will fix your problem or not. But I'll let you keep. I know what you're going through. I went through that the other day painfully. Okay. Well, anyway, thanks for passing to me, because the meaning was exactly my thoughts about just value and meaning. I forget, I think it was Steve Jobs may have said that if your goal is to make money, you'll make money, but you probably won't make any meaning. And if your goal is to make meaning, you'll make meaning and you'll probably make some money too. And I know that's kind of altruistic as a corporation, but most of the people we'll be dealing with are people who, I just heard something. I was hopeful that was our.
I think it might be me.
Yay! Congratulations. All right. If you give me one more second, I'll pass to you, okay, if that's okay. Yeah, but the idea is that you are working with corporations and they are looking at making money and value and so forth. So you have to, as you focus on meaning, you have to be able to associate that with what's the value of this and how do we actually make a difference, whether that be money or through affecting people. So I'll pass it now to the woman with the voice.
Thank you. Anyway, my apologies. I finally took myself off the big screen, and anyway, so here I am. How do I want to say this? You know, for me, everything boils down to people, because narrative is our main way of communicating. It's like the essence of how we communicate. And so anywhere I work, any kind of organization or group setting, it's always about, well, how can narrative connect with people? How does that happen? And what do the people really need, and what needs to go on here? And the problem that organizations try to solve, at the essence, it's a people problem. And so I love how everybody has talk that I've listened to in the conference this morning and other mornings, that in essence, everybody's talking about the people, right? And so I think narrative has a unique capacity to really help organizations be better in so many ways, because it's really about working with the people. No strategy happens without people. And no product or service happens without people. So that was my, initial thought about why I responded the way I did. And then I got involved in these tech problems, and I wasn't listening that well to everyone else was saying. So my apologies. But Terrence, I miss you. I love you too. And Jeff, it's great to know you. Kat, it's great to see you again. Rain, great to meet you. Kevin, great time to see you again. So anyway, my apologies, but I think I'm finally here.
Never.
And I'll send it over to Kevin.
And hopefully my mic's working.
Hey.
Is it working? Good. Karen, it's been a while, and it's great to meet the whole committee there. And as I was thinking of the question, I'm like, oh, wow, that makes sense. That makes sense. Terrence talked about purpose, and I think it's really important to have that purpose. And I was going to mention people, and that was mentioned, and the meaning making. So I want to, and the value. And so what I want to do is go from there. Is sometimes we wear our ties or whatever, the metaphorical ties, and we don't realize that our outside stories can go inside the world of the business. And I think it's really important that we don't indirectly or directly, consciously or unconsciously, make garters. Or, I've talked to a number of people who say, oh, well, that's my other life. It wouldn't apply here. And what we need to do is merge the story world so that it embraces and invites what you're doing outside to come inside when it makes sense for the meaning making that has value.
Great first round. Thank you so much. We can go to the next one, and I forgot what's next one was actually, but let's check it together. So the rules are the same. We did not send it yet, but we just type it. And again, dear listeners, please feel free to participate. Oh yeah, this is the one. What is one skill you believe is really important to master to be a good CSO? And just to clarify, we've talked about whether a CSO is needed as a separate role or it's not a title, but we can generalize and say to apply stories in organizations as a CSO or not as a CSO. So one skill you believe is really important. Mary Alice, you are the best. You're just copying them to the chat. Oh, this is so sweet. Okay, by show of hands, let me know when you're ready. Okay. Yeah. Okay, 1, 2, 3, send. Ooh, nice. That's where the intersection is happening. This is lovely. Okay, we don't have to go like one by one. If we just you can just voice out your comments and pass it on, and by show of hands, and I'm just here.
We all want to listen. That's the problem. We're all just wanting to listen. We don't want to talk. Okay, so just talk to us and we'll listen. No, but I think listening is the skill, because most people introducing themselves into storytelling thinks it's about their voice, and it's really not. It's about digging for stories and finding stories, and that's why I didn't put listening, but it's the same thing. It's a genuine empathy and curiosity, just being curious, asking questions, digging for the stories. People will tell stories to people they trust. So if you can't get a person to tell you their story, it's probably because they don't trust you. And so you need to work on that. And so I think that's one of the things. If you're curious and you ask questions about them, people will share their stories, and then you can, if it's a story that they want to move from, it gives you a platform on which to build a better story that they can actually see themselves moving. So again, I'm all about listening. Story catching, I think, is a great thing too. Whoever said that, Mary Alice, yeah, very good. All right. And I'm not going to pass it on. I'm going to just let somebody who's not listening talk.
I wasn't listening at all. I wish we were all together, like in person. It'd be so awesome. Absolutely listening. And I've got like Artem. When I saw that question, I have like 5 things written down. I put the one that I thought maybe people wouldn't see, but still, I think Terrence said connect. I put this one. It's a hidden skill, I'd say, of connecting dots. What that really means is observation, and of course, that's listening too. But so my background's in documentary filmmaking, specifically, done that over 20 years. Thousands of interviews, and being able to find the connective tissue between 2 events, 2 people, 2 things, whatever, I think is such an underrated skill. And it takes that objective observation to be able to see it, to remove yourself from that tunnel vision of subjectivity and look at something from that, bird's eye perspective and see like, oh, I mean, that's the part that gets me excited when I'm helping extract the story from whomever my subject is in a film, is when I see like, oh my gosh, they did that because of this thing that happened 20 years ago. Like that just is exhilarating to me. I know I sound like a nerd right now, but like it really is. And so I think that is a hidden, underrated skill of being able to see those connections that many people overlook, and then tell the story of that. So that's where I fall, Artem.
Rain, you got me fired up. So we're not going to leave any dead space here. I'm just going to go. The analogy that came to my mind is as a fencer, a lot of what you did was you tried to invoke a reaction from an opponent. And so that's a really good metaphor of what we do in an organization through this power of both listening and eliciting. once you invite, once you grab that initial reaction, you now have an opportunity to in this case, connect. Connect is making an actual hit, but we don't want to talk about hitting people here. What we want to talk about is the cadence and the moment at which other people can strike with their value, with their gifts, with what needs to be accomplished in the organization. And a lot of our work is, as Rain said, that connective tissue and eliciting, and that's done through listening and observation. So.
Well, I think I'll jump on in that space as well. We spend more time looking for our clothes than practicing listening. It is very, very important that we're reflective, deep listeners, and whether in business or in my case, schools and businesses, that we need to take the time to work on our listening almost every day, not in an evaluative way, but as Terrence just said, in an invitational way. Kate Murphy wrote a book called You're Not Listening, and basically says if you have a cell phone and it's not even on, people will listen 65% less to you because of that cell phone is there. Here's the deal. We need to create conditions where real listening can happen, and that makes people uncomfortable or uncertain until it becomes a practice, like a muscle that we continue to use, and that way changes are made because we're not interrupting people, we're listening people. We don't necessarily have to add, well, that happened to me all the time. What we need to do is just take it in, listen, and take the time to respond. But again, that is a practice, reflective practice.
Good.
And I'm going to jump in here too, because I'm going to agree with what everybody said so far. And did you know that there are actually 5 types of listening, 5 different methods of listening? And what we're talking about here is what Doug Lickman called appreciative listening. And the process of going through appreciative listening, asking reflective questions, giving appreciations in return. Many of you are probably familiar with this. I'm probably talking to the choir here, but giving appreciations is acknowledging what is going right, because you want more of what's going right. And it gets us out of this critical, evaluation piece when we're listening to narratives or working with them. And I think that it's such my personal experience working with this kind of listening is how much it unleashes energy, not only within the person that's being listened to, but within the person who's listening. And that so much deeper awareness about what's happening in that exchange grows and magnifies. And part of it, I think the bottom line to that kind of listening is that, again, what people have said already, people feel seen, heard, and valued. And every single person on the planet wants to feel seen, heard, and valued. Now, are there some ethical considerations, to know about and think about when you're doing that, right? Sometimes I wonder if in organizations, that kind of unleashing that power of narrative can be dangerous, right? If leadership isn't willing to pull through and push through and follow through. But that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother conference, right? But anyway, those are just a few of my thoughts, on this piece of what's most important.
Oh, that's lovely. Anyone wants to jump in on this one, or moving to the next one?
I think we could all talk on all of these. I love that we're so aligned here, right? That it is the receiving and eliciting and noticing and catching of story that is as much the responsibility of this role as telling or spreading. I love that.
Yeah. You actually inspired me to slightly change the next question. I'm not able to. Oh, sorry.
If I could.
Go on.
Yeah. If I could just rip off of something that Kevin said, I know I've already spoken, but for those of you listening, not this panel, but as you're a becoming storyteller and you're starting to take notes, I encourage you highly to get a notepad and not try to take notes on your computer or on your phone, because that's a real, if you're sitting at a keyboard, and people have told me, well, I can take notes better on my PC, that's fine, but the people watching you has no idea what you're typing or what you're doing. If you're sitting there with a small notepad as someone's talking and you're writing notes, they know you're listening.
Yeah, it's just like the signaling, the right signaling. Exactly. All right. So as I was saying, you guys inspired me to slightly change the next question. I'm not able to do it from like on the screen, but I'll just voice it out a bit differently. So initially it was, what is the biggest barrier for a chief story officer in those who work with stories in organizations? But now I would love to dive a bit deeper into where you're taking us. So what is the biggest barrier for listening and creating these spaces of deliberate listening in an organizations? Like the biggest barrier you can think of. Again, type it in. Do not send it yet. Raise your hand when you're ready. And dear listeners, please weigh in. Biggest barrier for creating the areas or spaces for listening in organizations. It can be personal, it can be systems, it can be social, it can be anything. Okay. Okay, yeah, I can see you. Okay. Kevin, have you had your hand up in the air, or did I miss it? Yeah, Rain, I see you. Okay, awesome. 1, 2, 3, send. This is interesting. Now that's interesting. We all have different aspects of it, so I would love to hear comments on that. Let's weigh in.
Okay, I'll jump in. Know what level of story to tell. It has to do with listening, because there's a Dave Logan did a great TED talk on tribes and how people feel. There's 5 levels of tribes. There's actually, when I think of corporate in a corporation or in an organization, there's people that have issues and they think at different levels. The first level is how do I stop the pain? They're at that level. How do I stop the pain? And they've got some problem you need to address. The other people, next level up is feel good. How do I feel good? That's one thing. They feel comfortable. The next one's, how do I get what I want? That's somebody trying to get something, and then you go further up to saying, what am I capable of, or what are we capable of? Those are the 5 levels. And you need to know what story to tell, because if you have someone who said, I just need to stop the pain, and you go in there telling them a story about what are we capable of, they can't reach it. They can't go that far up the ladder. They might be able to go to the how do I get you to feel good. In other words, it's almost a level thing. So if you need to understand before you even start telling a story, especially with an objective of moving them to a level, you need to understand what level they're on. Because someone who's just in pain and just has a problem, and you go in there and talk about worldly things and how big things are, and this how we can all be so much better and so forth, they can't even perceive that. They can't understand that story. They can't even hear it. So again, I think it's just a matter of listening, understanding how far you can actually help this person and move that person. And once they're there, you can move them up and keep moving them. But that's, for me, that's part of listening too.
I think there are a lot of skills and insights and mindsets that someone in a storytelling role can have and should have. I think the biggest barrier that I notice with our clients, really to anything, is power, and the way navigating power dynamics. So how that shows up, I think, in terms of the listening is who is listened to, whose voice is heard, what stories are amplified, what stories are silenced. And even if a chief storytelling officer might be doing all the listening in the world, where are they being blocked? Where are their stories being blocked is probably just the best word. Or so I think that we do ourselves, I think at least here in the States, there has been a tradition of saying things like, oh, we don't have that here, right? Or everybody has a voice, and it's always the people with the power who are not aware of it. So I think that would be a dynamic that the reason that it would be great to have a chief storytelling officer is because ostensibly they would have a little bit of power, formal authority, and other kinds of power and influence in the organization. But who knows if that's real or what? So
I'd love to play off of that, going not only from the positional power as it relates to whether others are disempowered and not heard, and whether or not they feel they can show up with their stories. And I want to also focus on the chief storytelling officer, or any leader or any person, finding the appropriate intimacy. So we know authenticity, we know vulnerability, but there's this, and it's a very difficult balance to find, which is, how far do I extend myself into a boundary that creates intimacy with others through what I reveal about myself. And I think, in my experience as a chief storytelling officer, one of the first things we did at Accenture was helping the teams themselves that had delivered services for clients share where they had fallen. That starting at that system level, and then of course you build on personal levels, the individuals that were on that team and contributing. And then once they got used to that, because we were helping them to give a sense to the clients of what it's going to be like to be with us. If you ask us to show up at your place to help your organization, what is it going to feel like to be elbow to elbow with us? So we first had to be able to be vulnerable as an organization. We had to be vulnerable as the teams that contribute to that. That then had a ripple effect, because it sent a message that all of us had to find appropriate levels of vulnerability and intimacy for authenticity to deliver results.
Another take I have on it, I agree with what everybody's been saying, and I'm fascinated by your 5 levels of conversation, because it maps to some other stuff that I know, and I'd love to talk more with you about that. But in this last point that we're making, I think we also have to pay attention to, of course, the problem that the organization is trying to solve, and frame that whole narrative work, around that problem. Because I think it's really important to have conversations with the client about part of my responsibility as, a narrative practitioner is to find the stories that aren't being told, because those are just as informative as those that are being told. And we will learn a lot by doing a little, what I call the story archaeology, right? Of unearthing, right? Not only acceptable stories, but those undiscussables, right? And, having conversations with clients about, this may make you feel uncomfortable, and, suck it up. So in so many words or less, And I think it's really, yeah, go ahead, Kat.
No, you go ahead. I interrupted. I thought you were done.
Oh, I'm just thinking about what the next word is, but I think the clearer we are about our role as narrative practitioners, maybe it'll be, that navigation of these troubled waters can sometimes get a little easier. Go ahead, Kat.
I have another thought about this or another answer that's coming to mind. I don't know if it's exactly connected to listening, but I think it's a challenge for us as practitioners and chief storytelling officers. And I also connects to this question about ethics that Jeff was raising in the chat. I'll try to say it succinctly, but I might have to tell a little story. Do you all know what complementarity is in quantum physics? So one of my father's favorite stories was he told a story about Niels Bohr, the quantum physicist, who was talking about complementarity. So complementarity, for those who don't know, is it's a relationship between two qualities, so that if you know more about one, you know less about the other, right? So if you're measuring a particle and you know more about its position, you can know less about its velocity, or vice versa. If you know more about, you can measure more precisely the velocity. Okay, so that's complementarity. He was giving a lecture on it, and a student raised their hand, perhaps apocryphally, and said, Dr. Bohr, what is the complementarity to truth? And he said, clarity. So I think that there is this way that we're working, especially in organizations, to be very clear with our stories. And yet sometimes when we're clear, they're less true or less helpful or less complete, right? That by reducing complexity, we are, by increasing clarity, we're reducing the complexity that's really needed to be fully revelatory or whole or true. And so I think there's a dilemma there.
Oh
Thank
yeah,
you for
I'll just
indulging me.
weigh in because that's what I believe exactly what Annette Simmons was sharing yesterday, where we should keep the space and not go for 100% clarity. Like this resonates really big time. Thank you so much for sharing this. All right, any more comments? Yeah, go for
I could
it.
say one thing too about one thing about the clarity piece. I started my life as a graphic artist, and I remember, and a long time ago, so we were using drafting boards with slides and so forth. And I remember I was putting together a piece of work, and something was level. I leveled it; it was level. But when I removed the level, it didn't look level. And the old guy that was helping me looked at it and said, "Make it so it looks level. I don't care if the ruler says it's level. Make it look level." Which I guess is the part that you're bringing to it. A lot of times we can take judgment and say, this is the way it should be. But when you step back from it, go, that's not right. And so that's what brought to mind when you were saying that. I think it's a beautiful thing that you said. So
That's such a great analogy. I grew up in a historic home, and I also own one myself, 120 years old. It's like hanging a picture on a wall of a house that floors are not level. It's like if you level the picture, it looks askew, right? So that's perfect analogy. I love that so much.
Oh, I guess it's not only the house recently that is not level with the floors, but we won't go into that. that's an unlevel path to take. So awesome. I'm back. Yeah, I will invite you in.
You have to understand most people are not level. Most people are not level. We deal with unlevel people all the time. So it's up to us. Okay.
Yeah, sounds great. Kevin, rejoin us, please. And if you have any comments on this one before we dive into, I guess, what will be the last one, or not. I'm not sure. So. Okay, while Kevin is joining, I just from listening to you and especially to the part with you're back, awesome. With the part with listening to the voices that are not heard and the stories are not heard, I thought of a question that is not related to the slides. But first, Kevin, is there a comment you'd like to give on this one?
Sure. The subject is what was not heard. I didn't hear any of it.
Subject. what is in your mind the biggest barrier to listening and to creating listening spaces in organizations?
Well, I did write down that agendas, because often we artificialize what's most important by trying to get everything on the agenda done and not making space. We make listening secondary or not at all, or what we have in between the cracks. And we need to really re-examine our agendas, not so that they're open for certainty all the time, but listening creates discovery. And so we need to have spaces for discovery.
Love it. Thank you. This is lovely. So a question that just popped into my mind, it has a video in it, and I would like to show you just an example. You've probably seen it on one of the previous conferences, maybe, but I'm not sure on which one. So I'll just show it. It's a project created by Перекресток Retail Store. I'll just show it. It's in Russian, but with English subtitles, supposedly. So let's just watch it together and the question then.
Мы пригласили представителей малого бизнеса получить грант на развитие их дела. Но путь к нему оказался сложнее, чем они думали.
Привет.
Привет.
Мне очень нравится ваше кафе. У вас очень вкусный капучино.
У вас очень вкусные блинчики с семгой.
Лавандовый раф просто супер. Я бы хотел почаще посещать ваше заведение.
Но, к сожалению, в ней абсолютно нет доступной среды.
Поэтому я попросила Перекресток
выделить вам грант на развитие доступной среды, чтобы я стала вашим самым любимым клиентом. Да, спасибо вам.
Спасибо.
Спасибо большое, брат.
So for me, like I tear up every time I watch this. I'm sorry. So for me, this clip is connected to a question that came to my mind. I believe the people who have disabilities in this clip were like invisible, so to speak, before the sudden realization. And what strikes me is that when you experience something for yourself, so you live through it first, and then you realize that somebody is living through it, you suddenly become aware. And this is an ability of story. So we invite someone into a different world and they envision it. And that gives us the ability to listen to others. So my impromptu question, I don't know, I don't even know if it makes sense, but what in your mind is one of the abilities of story that can help us listen better? apart from like this visualization of somebody else's experience. Let's also get it into the chat and raise your hand when you're ready. I hope it all made sense, because it does in my head, but I'm like 3 days in and it's all blurry.
Can you just rephrase that question or restate it?
What is an ability of story, something a story can do that can trigger better listening in people? So it can visualize the experience of the other, and we can become conscious of it through this visualization or through living this and embracing it. Maybe there are some other abilities of story, so to speak, that can help us listen better. So something that a story can do, or something that a story practitioner can do. I honestly thought of this question in Russian, because and it made sense in Russian, but I'm trying to so yeah, the question doesn't make sense is a good enough reply. I'm not like okay. Awesome. Oh, you're already saying, okay, send. We're not counting to 3. 1, 2, 3, send. Okay. All right. So I would love to hear your reflections on this, and maybe some comments on what you see on the chat.
I think, Artem, I mean, you said the first thing, right? Which is it allows us to experience in other people's shoes, right? We get to do in a virtual or metaphorical way the experience that these folks had in physical space of understanding or experiencing something outside of our own personal lived experience, or to understand our own lived experience in more deeply if we're telling our own stories. So the second thing then I thought of was it can help us in terms of listening. What does it do in terms of listening? Is just get us interested, right? Sometimes we don't, there's so much noise and so many things commanding our attention that I think what a good story does is can focus us to open up and want to hear, want to listen, want to know more. That's what first thought I had.
You know, Kat, I'm going to expand on that a bit because I love what you said. And, you know, I wrote the Willing to Be Entranced by somebody else's story. But along with that, I mean, and I think it goes the same in organizations as with the other work I've done with helping former foster youth and survivors of human trafficking tell their story in a way that wasn't harmful to them or to the audience. And what I had to be very, very mindful of whenever I was listening to their stories was, first of all, to put on hold any kind of thinking about what are we going to do with this story, you know, which is always happens in an organization. You know, you're collecting stories so you can do something with them. And I had to suspend all of that, put all of that on hold. And simply listen to that story, but some of these are just horrific stories. And part of storytelling, as you said, is feeling that connection, that engagement, and walking in somebody else's shoes. So the way I've developed listening in those situations, and then actually carried over into organizations, was to listen, and my role was to just reflect back to that person their magnificence. And when I was able to do that, their stories, the particulars of their stories, as horrific as they were, could always wash over me. And yet that experience of seeing them in their fullest magnificence carried back to them. It was a piece of magic that I never really decoded, you know, in every way. It was just that experience of that happening. And I think that, again, that's another small piece of listening, right, that we're kind of talking around here also. And so I just wanted to offer that also as another, additional perspective to what you said, or an add-on, or an expansion of what you said.
To follow up with Karen a little bit, it's a recent discovery for me. I have a good friend that has MS, and he went through a long account of how he had to crawl on the floor and he couldn't move, and he had to talk through a mail slot because no one can get through. And I listened to him tell this story, and I looked, actually I was talking on the phone, and I said, to him, I said, I can't tell you I know what it feels like. I can't tell you that I've been there. And he said, thank you, Kevin. You know how many people tell me that they've fallen once and that they can appreciate what my experience is? We need to take time to be at the place where it happens. So story can bring you to that place where something happens, but not necessarily recreate the experience that the person told. It can get close. It's probably the closest thing to get to, but it doesn't always do. Sometimes the listening strength allows that person to get closer to their own experience.
There's something about storied imagination. I've always been intrigued by how stories allow us to hold very diverse points of view at the same time without having the need to resolve them. And there's so many beautiful examples. When I talk about this, I always use the example of dreams, how in a dream, two things are true at the same time. You could be flying and swimming. It could be your mother and your sister. And this is also very much true as we listen to each other's very strong experiences. And in this deeper storied place of listening, we're less concerned about who's right, who's wrong, what exactly is the way forward. And then something magical happens. I wish I could explain it. I know we could probably get complexity theory on here. Actually, Mary Alice Arthur is like wonderful. This is one of the things that, her whole work is on. And a number of our other practitioners really understand this. Artem, you do this. You just modeled this in a way by even using this example of responding to the moment, taking us to this video, and trying to pull us into a very diverse, kind of space. But that this quality of stories is what is so needed at a time when there's such division, when there is such a need for each person to be anchored in their point of view. So never before have we been living in such a polarized world, and a world that is closer, where the capacity for us to enter into a storied imagination and hold very different points of view and deal with those paradoxes, wrestle with those unresolved things, and trust that somehow a new door will open, as Jeffrey was talking about before, a new quest will happen, whether that be an elder quest, whether it be a clean beginning, middle, and end, because we've got a new policy in the organization and we can kind of set the direction. Anyway, thank you. This is very rich, very, very rich.
Thank you. All right. I believe we still have time for one more concluding question.
If I could too, before you jump into that,
Of course, yes.
if, made me think of the Zulu greeting Sawubona, which they greet one another with. It actually means "I see you," and it's not just about seeing that person there, but seeing their family and seeing their circumstances and seeing what's in there. And I think that's something that we as storytellers help people do by listening well is practice that I see you, and I don't just see you as just as the body and the color that's coming back because the light's hitting you. I see your situation and I see what you're in, and I can help you with that story or tell that story or share that story.
Totally with you on that. And we just, I guess Kevin just mentioned it in his talk. I believe that was a part of it because I just heard it today. I like how this resonates between you guys. All right, so one final question, and I'm going to get to the practical side of it back from the listening lens, but listening is practical. So what small step would you advise the beginning CSOs to take to bring value with stories to their organizations? One advice, again, don't send it just yet. Let's type it in. And again, if it's not like a CSO, but maybe somebody working with stories, to make the game more interesting, let's abstain from writing "listen" as an advice, because we've clearly were there for the majority of the discussion. So one small step, one small advice. And again, when you're ready, by show of hands. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. 1, 2, 3, send. Karen took a detour. That's lovely. All right. So your thoughts on this, your comments on this, and I guess we'll be wrapping it up.
I'll go ahead and jump in, Artem. So when I was researching this role, these kinds of roles for my book, Terrence was one of the interviews that I conducted. Almost every single chief storyteller and organization that they're with that I spoke to had some sort of process in place for extracting story catching, all the expressions that we've used to date, listening sessions, right? Story sharing sessions, feedback loops, whatever we want to call it, input, right? Instead of just like, how do we talk about ourselves and our products and our services, right? And there's something that I said in my session on what day was it, Artem? Wednesday. And there's a slide that I have that when you are using storytelling as infrastructure, as an entire system in your business, and not just how we talk about ourselves, right? For everyone to buy into it, right? That's the whole thing we're after, right? It is cohesion here, right? With the narrative. For everyone to buy into it, all your stakeholders, internal and external, they have to feel like they are also feeding into it. Okay? So we're all bonded together, but they also are all feeding into that story. We're bonded together by the story if they feel like they are feeding into it. And so that's one through line that I have noticed. So if I were talking to a rookie CSO, there's plenty of things they're going to have to do, and we'll talk more about them. But that's one small thing that I think a lot of the brands and corporations that are now hiring creative storytellers and such that we see all the viral articles about, I think many of them might miss. Is this just like a head of content, right? Or a head of talking about ourselves? And that is one easy system that I think they could implement that would inform the narrative that they craft, the stories that they tell moving forward. Is that's an easy thing, whether it's quarterly, weekly, monthly, whatever the term, that's for them to decide. But some process, not just winging it and hoping for it, but a system that is put in place for us to receive stories, which is still effectively listening, Artem. So apologies.
I realized, Artem, that you said, what's one small, simple thing? And I wrote uncover current ambient narratives, which is gigantic and ongoing forever and impossible. So, so much for listening well. But it does seem to me that that a lot of the value is uncovering the stories that are just the water that we swim in, that we're not even paying attention to, that we're not aware of. Like what assumptions do we have? And I think that would be a great place to start, is really sort of be curious about what are the ambient narratives that we may be taking for granted without even knowing they're there.
Since Kat gave herself permission to be big, I'm going to give myself permission to be big. For the last 15 years, I've adapted a narrative mindset where I think, act, and respond in story. And a small step leads to larger progress. I think whole companies, I think dynamic conversations and relationships, since our brain is wired for story, since it's how we make meaning, we should change things so that we do act, think, and respond in narrative. It's done wonders for me. It's done wonders for my students. And actually, it's changed the whole way that I make meaning and make purpose and value. And honestly, it will only benefit a business, but more importantly, it'll benefit the human dynamic relationships of care and commitment and understanding of each other.
Beautiful, Kevin. I just want to riff off of that with one of the favorite things I love saying: the shortest distance between two people is a story. And so CSOs, be self-aware, develop an index, an understanding of your experiences and how they might have any relationship first to the mission and the organization that you're serving, not for purposes of pounding your chest and establishing that you're the best thing since sliced bread to walk into the organization, but as a place of continuity, as a place of entering into the fabric. And then map out your stakeholders. Understand what is important to them, understand where their stories begin and end, both personally and organizationally. And that is a huge undertaking, but the critical place where I feel you need to start.
I'm going to agree again with what people have said. I think there are different methodologies to use for that. After you gather the stories, what do you do with them and how do you handle them and for what application and, all those best practices. That information is out there, and every CSO needs to survey that information and decide, methods that work best for them. And I also think there's another principle of storytelling that's operating here that we're kind of sort of poking at, and that is every story. You're not telling a story. When you're up on stage or telling a story to anybody, you're not necessarily telling that story to tell the story. You're telling that story because of the audience, the person who's in front of you. And so everything is designed for the audience, right? And yet, at the same time, I can't tell you how many times I've gone into an organization and they tell me what they want, and I'm asking myself in my head, yeah, but what do you need? What do you really need, right? And that's the story that needs to be told. What do you really need? And you'll get what you want in that, because that may shift and change as you hear those stories, right? But that's another part of engaging with narrative in an organization, is that you yourself, your own skills, talents, and who you are as a person, you bring that to the table, and you bring all the narrative skills to the table and all your roles and responsibilities. And, I think the conference has been talking about all of that, and people have been sharing their points of view and their wisdom about all of that. And so there's a lot to being a CSO, right? Personally, going back to what Jeff Mead said, the self, the people, and then the world. Those three levels.
Yeah. And I'll take a moment to do one of those elder moments. I'm looking at this panel and I'm thinking I'm probably the oldest person on the panel. And so I'll take advantage of that for the moment. I think, and I'm thinking more of the people who are listening rather than those of us assembled here on this panel, because I look at this group gathered here and I can think of the number of years and the number of efforts that have been made. And those of you who are starting out and you're trying to put yourself in a position of being a chief story officer, it's hard and you have to do the work. I remember a scene in Indiana Jones where he said, to be a good archaeologist, you got to get out of the library. And to be a storyteller, you've got to get with people and you've got to look for stories and share stories. You can't do this sitting. And I once met a guy who said he was in charge of story at IBM. And I met him in New York City, and I asked him how he was getting along with clients and stuff. He said, "Oh, I don't travel." And I thought, that's so sad. It's like, how can you possibly do this? I'm not going to share his name. He didn't last long, but there is a point in which you've got to get out and try stories, hear stories, share them. It's hard. And the other thing too is when I was a chief storyteller, I remember I looked on LinkedIn and I could find 5 people who said they were chief storytellers. Clayton at Microsoft was one. There's a few of us around, and now you can't. I mean, you did a search. If you do a search on LinkedIn for chief story officers or chief storytellers, you're going to see a bunch of people, and I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that people are looking at story as an answer, because it is a great answer to a problem that we're having. But it's hard, and the thing I love is one time I had an analyst tell me, he said, "You can't call yourself a storyteller until someone else calls you a storyteller." And it's like, you've got to be recognized for the work before you can actually claim the title. And the other part of that is I hear people, and again, just old guy, I hear people saying, I'm passionate about storytelling. Well, the root word of passion is to suffer. Is to suffer. I usually ask, well, tell me, how have you been suffering for storytelling? What have you done that's really hurt you? Or what pain have you suffered by being a storyteller? And a lot of people look at this as just, it's all fun and glitter and sprinkles, and people come and flock to you and they want to hear your stories. It's hard work. It looks like magic. It's like a magic act. You have to work really hard to make it look simple, which is one of the challenges as a CSO you'll find, is that your people, when you do it really well, people look at it and they'll think it looked easy, and it's not. And so you just do the work. Just do the work. And enough so that people will turn around and go, that was something, and they take notice of it. And then those people will follow you. And then you can be a chief. You can't be a chief unless people's following you, by the way. That's one of the things about being a chief, is you've got to have followers. So you got to develop those. So anyway, that's my rant at the end of this conference, I guess. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much. Thank you all, guys. It's been such a pleasure. I'll just finish this off with while we were talking, I received an email which I didn't yet open, but I saw a notification on my phone screen, which it read like, let me just actually read you the beginning of it. So Artem, kudos to making this amazing event. I'm listening to the last conf panel. I realized I don't want to make it to end, and then ... So there's like an email of a participant here. So I feel exactly the same way, and it's painful to say that we're on time, but I believe this moment in time is just shows exactly how we can come together in any kind of times to bring the light and discuss matters that enliven us. So thank you all. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you all of you for being a part of this panel and a part of this conference. You're amazing.
Thank you, Artem.
Thank you, everyone, for listening and taking the time to do it.
Yeah.
Great meeting, everyone. Thank you, Artem, for shepherding
You
us.
too. Thank you.
Artem, the gift of your time, and may you be richly blessed, just holding us together as a global community, a bunch of lone wolves, because we really are lone wolves.
Thank you
Bless
so
you.
much. All right, so a couple of words before we part. I don't know if I don't know if anyone noticed, but I've been in this shirt for like 2.5 days, and it has this symbol on my chest, which obviously is a compass, because I believe no matter how much experience we have in story, we all have a story inside of us. And what I want to wish as a final parting wish is for all of you to listen to that story and use it well, find the direction you want to go, and feel that you can pass this direction to those who follow you. Thank you so much for listening to this conference. Thank you for being a part of it. And I guess we'll see each other next time. Thank you so much. Thank you. Here's a parting gift.